Good evening. He has a rap sheet that could fill a book.
And police say the accused bank robber who killed 2 women while fleeing officers yesterday should have been behind bars, not behind the wheel. Jeremiah Jackson has been in and out of jail for the past 10 years. He's admitted to FBI agents he was making his getaway after robbing the New Mexico Bank and Trust at Louisiana and Candelaria when he slammed into a car stopped for a red light at Coors and Quail. Kimberly Aragon Nunez and Janice Flores, who were co-workers, probably never knew what hit them. Jackson was just released from prison in February and violated probation late last month. Tonight, News 13's Caitlin McCarthy presses for answers about why he was still on the streets.
31-year-old Jeremiah Jackson has spent a decade in a revolving door of justice.
Mr. Jeremiah Jackson is unfortunately another one of those offenders that doesn't have a rap sheet. He has a rap book. I think it's very clear that the criminal justice system failed in this particular case. Mr. Jackson should have been in the Department of Corrections facility.
Jackson has done some prison time for domestic violence, kidnapping, and having stolen property. But he has spent more time on probation than sitting in a cell. And at least a half dozen times he's violated that probation.
Jeremiah Jackson should have been behind bars.
Do you think it was appropriate, given his criminal history, to put him back on probation?
That's not for us to determine. We're here to determine or to monitor them and then report whether they're in compliance or non-compliance.
Probation and parole makes the recommendation. The judge makes the final decision. Officer Hartman says Jackson violated his probation in March by not reporting that he had moved and for having alcohol at his home. A district court judge put Jackson in jail 2 days for those violations. After he did the time, Judge Ross Sanchez signed off on letting Jackson back out on probation. The judge says the probation office recommended it. Albuquerque's chief public safety officer and the police chief blame the courts for going easy on Jackson all these years. An example of that, Jackson was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison in late 2006. With time served and good behavior, he was released a year later. Then Jackson violated his probation by not checking in with his probation officer and spent another year behind bars. Jackson got out in February and then spent 2 days in jail in March for minor probation violations.
It makes you ask yourself, what does it take anymore to put somebody behind bars and keep them there?
As for the allegations that judges should have given Jackson harsher sentences, Chief District Court Judge Ted Baca had no comment. Caitlin McCarthy, KRQE News 13.
Bank robbery charges were filed against Jackson in federal court today. He could also be charged with murder.
APD is defending the decision to pursue Jackson after a witness to the robbery gave them his license plate number. An officer spotted Jackson near Carlisle and Comanche, chased him to I-40, then across town to Coors, where she slowed down and lost sight of him after calling for air support. She drove up on the aftermath of the wreck a short time later. Police say the decision to chase a suspect comes down to weighing the relative dangers of the criminal and the pursuit.
We only chase violent felons. In this particular case, Mr. Jackson was that. He was a violent felon. He had robbed a federal institution, that being a bank.
As for the victims, both leave behind young children. Kimberly Aragon Nunez and Janice Flores worked for Albuquerque's WIC program. They were picking up lunch for their co-workers when Jackson slammed into them. Their office is now temporarily closed as co-workers, friends, and family grieve.
She was so much fun, and we would just always laugh and have a great time, and anyone who knows her knows that.
Donations are being taken for the victims at Wells Fargo Bank under either Kimberly Aragon Nunez or Janice Flores benefit memorial funds.